Hello and welcome to this month's edition of Ask Me Anything. I'm Beatrice Stonebanks and I am going to walk you through the power of sales cycles. By way of an agenda, I'm going to walk you through some samples and I'm going to give you a couple of statistics. You know how I love the numbers. And for the first time ever, I'm going to give you some homework, an actual sales cycle template that you can fill in. Let's get started. I'm going to walk you through the samples first, and I'm going to do that by sharing my screen briefly. This is a PowerPoint. I know it's not in presentation mode, but then I can see you at the same time. Here is a basic sales cycle. You can overlay your own, but for now, just look at the basics. You find a lead, you connect with them, you qualify them. Maybe you present your product and service or a proposal. You overcome their objections, questions they may have. You close the deal and you nurture the lead. That's a basic sales cycle. Very, very simple. A more complicated sales cycle, the first time I presented this, one of the members laughed at me. Yeah, it's a little more complicated, but let me walk you through this whiteboard edition of how we created the sales cycle before we put it into a graphic format that was cleaner. The same components live along the top: prospecting, meeting, proposal phase, contract, and then maintenance. Very, very simple sales cycle phases. The two large yellow lines are also simple. After the client that is prospected and they decide there's no fit or there is a fit, they go into their CRM, their customer relationship management database. Very simple component. After they're a fit, they go into their CRM. The yellow line on the other end of the sales cycle means they've closed them and now they go into ConnectWise. That's the project management software that this client uses. Yours may be different. Point is, simple phases, simple attachments to another portion of their database. Underneath each phase, you can choose and qualify, both fall under prospecting, meeting to evaluate their needs. Every single item is not now, now, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. You can look at this. I will be giving it to you in the handout in more detail. QBR means quarterly business review, qualifying questions, those QQs at the end of each box, qualifying questions. There is a key down here. The piece I want you to notice about this particular sales cycle is the color coding. Who's doing what in each phase? Notice how some of them are purple for half of the phase and pink for half of the other phase. That means leadership and the core center of excellence, COE, that's for that particular client, is working with them. When a prospect is being qualified, that's the sales job. But when prospects are coming to you or you're researching them and finding them, development may be a different person, an admin, an assistant, a lead generation source behind your website. My point with this slide is, despite how complicated it may look, it's streamlined to be simple phases, simple actions, and color-coded by person who's going to take the action, not their name, their title, so that this becomes a training tool should it be necessary down the road. Let's keep looking at some more. I can't cover all of the details behind these items, but again, I'm going to give them to you, and I'm always here if you have questions after the fact. The piece I want to point out about this one, complicated, particular to a certain company, and now put into that graphic format I talked about. CRM Opportunity Stages, this blue bar at the top, means everything is tracked in their customer relationship management software, their CRM, a glorified database, if you will. The stages, same as the phases. Call it whatever you want. Phases, prospecting, stages, use your own name. Very, very simple. And then what happens under each stage is also lined out, color-coded, and directly added to their CRM at a certain point. This particular style of sales cycle is what I'm suggesting that you do. Map it out, lay it out in colors by person their title, not their name, and split it into phases. Very, very straightforward. The typical sales cycle has some additional metrics to it that are particularly important. And I want to point out, these are the numbers. As the old saying goes, sales is a numbers game. So let's look at them. According to research by Sales Management Association, 90% of all companies that use a formal guided sales process were ranked as highest performing. Oops, let me stop share. Good. I'll go back to that slide in a second. So that was 90% of all companies that use a formal, guided, color-coded, phase-by-phase sales process were ranked as the highest performing. Studies by Harvard Business Review have also found that companies that implement a sales process outperform companies that do not. Want to be one of those? Harvard Business Review also reveals that 50%, half of the high-performing sales organizations, admit having closely monitored, strictly enforced, or even automated sales processes. Meanwhile, the other half of underperforming organizations have non-existent or informal sales processes. Some people don't like sales. That's a whole different topic. But if you're going to grow, have a company that sells products and services, it's fair to say that more companies could do better at sales process management. According to Objective Management Group, a whopping 68% of all salespeople do not follow a sales process at all. Pretty stunning, if you ask me. So let's go back to our slides for a second here. There they are, and share them. So let's talk about this next piece. What I'm suggesting is that you create two sales cycles, visual representations of your sales cycle, one for new clients and one for upselling existing clients. If you need to increase your revenues immediately, take a look at this slide. The typical B2B sales cycle length, new versus existing customers, in 1 month, look how much you can increase your revenues. Less than 1 month, 1 to 3 months. If you stay in touch with, have a sales cycle that touches your existing clients consistently, that's a low-hanging fruit strategy. How many times I am called into a cash crunch situation and say, and ask, can you pick my low-hanging fruit? And they throw me 200 calls, 200 clients that I have to call. Yes, I can, but you should be doing that on your own. The point is, call them up. They're your clients. This is an easy question. Hey, you're also already using A, B, and C. Do you know that we also offer D, E, and F? This is a low-hanging fruit call that can increase your sales cycle in 1 month, let alone significantly in 3 months. So that's one piece. That's existing customers, how to leverage the numbers to increase your revenues now. But now let's look at this next one. The next piece I want to point out on this is quarterly hitting your numbers by twice a year, checking with all of your existing clients and those new ones. So twice a year, every 4 to 6 months, 1 to 3 months, this is where the numbers are the highest. On the new client side in red and on the blue existing customer side, right here, 1, or let's just say 3 months, since we have this 1 month component over here. I'm confusing you in these numbers, but after I send you this slide and you look at it a little bit further, you'll see what I mean. Approximately 3 to 6 months, quarterly. This is your sweet spot. You should be prospecting new customers. They're going to close in that range typically, and existing companies to keep your revenues up. A lot of companies are really busy and then they're not, really busy and then they're not. One of the ways to even out your funnel, having a consistent flow of new prospects year round, is to pay attention to this portion of the sales cycle. This portion of the sales cycle has you touching existing clients quarterly and feeding new clients into the sales funnel also quarterly. So let's talk a little bit about how that happens, because what part of the sales process is the most challenging for your team? Yes, prospecting. You are not alone. Prospecting is definitely one of the challenges that people find the most hard, the most challenging, we'll just duplicate the word, to overcome. This is where a sales cycle comes in. If on that side of prospecting or even pre-prospect, and we're going to go into that next, you are paying attention to what they want, they automatically come into your funnel more easily. And then all you're doing is qualifying them. So prospecting is the most challenging part of the prospect, but there are two ways to handle this. The first is, and this is the panacea, I did a Ask Me Anything on this a couple of months ago on inbound marketing. Think HubSpot, Marketo, Salesforce. These are automated backends to your website that automate your sales and marketing phases. When a prospect goes into that CRM, remember that yellow line? Certain things happen automatically. They're tagged with a title of what kind of product or service they may be interested in, the demographics of their company size, their budget, whatever components are most important to your sales cycle, they get a tag and they go into this inbound automated sales and marketing back into your website, so they can automatically be sent the kinds of content that walk them through your sales cycle. So it isn't a human being all the time until a human being is needed. This is how you create the blog post that appeals to what they're thinking about, or the case study that gives them the solution to the problem they may also have, or the piece of content that leads them to take the next step. Inbound marketing, automated sales and marketing, having the leads come to you is the panacea. All sectors now are grounded in technology use. Automating the back end doesn't have to be with a system, a platform. It can be done manually. Go back and watch that inbound Ask Me Anything interview for that portion. But having one is the panacea. That's the one component. How do we overcome that most challenging part of the sales process, the prospecting part? Consider getting an inbound back into your website. But the other one is focusing on the pre-sale, putting out that content, social media posts, anything that matches where they are. The style of content is important. What's your persona? What do they read? If you're working with multiple higher education degrees and an older set of people, they don't want to read your blog. You need to give them a specific kind of content that's more in depth and high level. If you're working with a faster, shorter sales cycle, and there's an entry price point for them to attach themselves to, put out social media posts, drive them to that entry point. This is an entry point for me. Once a month, anyone can ask me anything. Come, show up for free. You don't have to wait for the video, or wait for the video if you want, because showing up can be a challenge just as easily as going through someone's sales cycle. Once you enter a sales cycle, though, if you're the client, think about how you want to be treated and respond to those kinds of content so the person you're buying from can give you the next piece of content in that sales journey. So you don't have to show up in person either if you don't want to. That may be a little confusing. So I'm going to share my screen again and go through this next visual that may help you understand what I'm talking about. Here it is. So I know you can't read all of these words, no worries. Again, I'm going to send it to you. But let's talk about the center: exploring options, planning and immersing, overcoming fear, and taking action. These are phases in a pre-sale process. No one has taken action until the end. So that's similar to a regular sales cycle. But this even starts before the prospecting on the company side. Okay, now I'm confusing myself. Let me say that over. This example is for a working adult seeking financial aid. Before they even go out to find a company that they may want to work with, this is the process they're going to go through, the pre-sale process. on your sales cycle. You need to put yourself in their shoes and think about, if someone is going to be seeking financial aid, they're going to explore the options. They're going to understand what federal aid is. They're going to understand private aid. They're going to understand student aid. The questions they're going to ask themselves are above each of those lines. What you're going to do is below this black line. So I really want you to explore this chart when I send it to you. And I've used seeking financial aid since most of the prospects I work with are not in that sector. I don't want it to be a sector that you can really relate to. I want it to be a sector that you have to think about. Hey, how do I overlay this on my sector? What should I be thinking about? So this won't sidetrack you. This will prompt little pieces of questions in your head going, that's the question they want the answer to. And then you know what kind of content to create. If they're exploring options, do they want to chat with a counselor? Is there a decision tree process? Another graphic you can give them for how to overcome this process they're going to step into? And how about an overview content? That's the same as that decision tree. Maybe you want to put out a chart like this one. That's how this sales cycle was created. This chart lives on the company's website so that prospects who aren't even ready to take action can think about, yeah, I'm in the exploring options phase. These are the questions I should ask myself. Oh, wait, I'm scared to death to do this. Can I identify with someone else who's doing it? Can I get some answers? This is so that your prospects can self-qualify, walk them through your process, and you're feeding them the content that they need as they go through your sales cycle and begin to step into being in your sales cycle formally, where they're going to interact with you. Touches that are human, one-on-one, don't happen so much in the beginning phases anymore of a sales cycle. Prospects have to self-qualify a bit. And then when they get down to the second, third, fourth, fifth phase of your sales cycle, they want a human being. They want someone to help them out, give them a proposal, walk them through the process and answer their questions with the right kinds of answers, not just, hey, do you want to buy? No. They're still not in the closing phase until they're in the closing phase. So here's where I want to pause for a second and point out, you're always answering questions and helping them sell themselves until that closing phase. So the closing phase is very different. The closing phase is no longer about, hey, are you ready to sign this contract? You can ask that. But if someone comes into you and says, I heard about X, Y, and Z, I've done my homework, I'm ready to buy, give me a proposal or give me a contract, I'm ready to sign. You know that they're over in the far end of the sales cycle and all these phases have been missed for you on your side. Don't miss it for them. Say, great, I'll give you a proposal. Let me just make sure that I've answered some other questions for you in advance so I get that proposal right. Go back over those phases with them and don't skip anything. That way you can ensure a 75 to 85% close rate because they've qualified themselves. You've qualified them as well. Your sales cycle has been structured and tended to. You've followed it. You've been systematized. You've used the system you've created to help the prospects come out the end and close themselves. So it's a lot of pieces, I know. But again, I'm going to send you the documents. You're going to look at them. It's going to make more sense. And you're going to begin to overlay your own sales cycle on top and answer some of those questions for yourself. Then you will have version 1 of your own sales cycle. Where I started this was that crazy, colorful whiteboard exercise. That was like version 5. This doesn't happen in one version. You get it right in 1 or 2 or 3 versions, and then you use it for a month and you update it again. Always asking, how do I make it better? How do I streamline it now? How do I make it easier for clients to work with me? There are some ways to really go deep on your sales cycle, but let's keep it simple for the sake of this video and worry about the ways to get all jiggy with it later. First, let's have that foundational sales cycle be put in place. So the last slide I want to show